Hello guys, welcome back to the tutorial of JavaScript videos. In this video I want to talk about JavaScript grammar and types. Before I get started to the type, I want to point out a simple way to write a JavaScript code. Like there's some caveat that you need to know. The first thing is that when you write a statement like this, you notice that I have included the semicolon at the end of the statement. So this means the end of statement. So every time that you put the semicolon, you tell JavaScript to terminate the statement. Okay, but now for JavaScript, this end of statement semicolon is optional. You don't need to put it. It will still work. But with the VS Code, you can set it up so that when you save the file, it will put a semicolon for you. Now, I highly recommend you to use the semicolon at the end of each statement. It's a good practice because when you have to jump to other programming language like C# or Java, those are mandatory. You need to put the semicolons. So if I, for example, like right now, I don't have a semicolon, right? But VS Code will put it for me. If I press save on this file like this, right, it's gonna come by itself. Okay, so now that's the first thing. The second thing I want to mention is JavaScript is a case sensitive language. So when you declare a variable like name and name like this with capital N, these are two different variables. Okay, case matters for JavaScript. Now the next thing that I want to point out is called comment. So comment are a block of code that won't get executed. So comment looks something like this. This is called one single line comment. Right? You can write anything, it won't get execute. And you also have a multi-line comments that look like this. Okay, and you can put this is multi-line comment like this. So this multi-line comments. Okay, so those are the kind of a basic grammar for JavaScript that gonna make your life easier. The next one is I want to talk about the declaration. So as you can see here, I declare a variable. So this is a let keyword. Now there's three ways for you to you can declare a variable. The first one is var let, which is what I just used just now, and const. Okay, now there are different between these three. The most obvious one is var. So with var, so I want to tell you a bit about var because back in the day when like a couple of years back when let and const has not such a thing. Yeah, it just came in. I can't actually remember exactly. It should be ES6. And var is the only thing and it's the only keyword that you can use to declare a variable, right? But with let and const is solve the problem of var that var has. So the problem with var is that it declare a global scope, which means if you declare a variable var using var keyword, you can access var from any block scope. Okay, so that is not a good thing. So scope, I will show you what is scope mean. Okay, so if I have, let's say, var x equal to 10, and I have a curly bracket like this, and I have var x is equal to 20. Okay, in the curly bracket, this is called scope. Okay, so this second var here is in their own scope. Okay, so this x here is in file scope, which is belong to this file. Okay, if I declare a function or an if-else statement or while loop or something like that, I will be able to access this. All right, because this is a global scope of in this file. Global in this sense, I mean this file. Okay, so now if I console.log here and I want to print out x, okay, now what do you think it's gonna print out? Okay, let me comment this. Okay, so if I save, it's print out 20, as you can see here, right? Now, the question is why? Because it's technically because console log is not in this scope. It's supposed to print this one, right? But the problem is because you use var keyword, right? If you're using var keyword, this X, we have access to this and this as well. Now, because the JavaScript or any programming language gonna execute the code from top to bottom, so the execution ends here, which means the latest value of X is 20. That's why you call X is gonna print out 20 because that's the latest values. Okay. Now, with let and const, I want to change this to let. Okay. All right. Now, if I print out X this time, what do you think it's gonna print? Okay, it's print out 10. And why is that? Well, because let and const will allow you to declare a block scope, which means if you use let and const as a keyword, block scope will apply to you. The block scope will apply to the variable that you declare. Okay. In this case, console log is in this scope, not in this bracket. That's why this X variable didn't get read. If you see, it's gray out, right? It's gray out. It didn't use because it used this one instead. Okay. So that's the difference between var and let. Now let's talk a bit about const. So const is stand for constant, right? Constant. Now if I declare const, let's say age is equal to 20. Okay. Now const means constant. Now const and let got one thing in common is that it's applied to the block scope. But thing with const is that when you declare const, you have to initialize the values. Because normally with let you can do like this, right? Like this. And then you in the next line you can do z equal to 10. This will work, okay? Yeah, you can't do this with const, okay? I can show you. If you do this with const, you're gonna have an error here. Instead, declaration must be initialized. Because with constant, if you don't initialize the values, JavaScript doesn't know what value it is contained. And with const, you can't once you declare, you can't change it. You can't change the values, all right? I'll show you. You see this? So this is going to have an error because you reassign the value to the constant. It's going to throw you an error and say assignment to a constant variable. So when you want to use const, that's the question. Well, you want to use const when you know exactly that variable will not change. For example, it could be some values that you know exactly is going to use that value throughout your application. And you want to use let. It's anytime you use a normal variable, okay, like name is equal to John, you know, something like this, okay. You might want to use name because you might change later name is equal to, I should not use name, let's say first name, okay. Let's say first name is equal to, you know, Mary, right? You can change later, right? Let's show you this. See? So now this is a difference between const, let, and var. I highly recommend you not to use var unless you have a very, very good reason to do so. Please use let and const. So it's easier for you to find the bugs, where you might find a mistake, when a variable goes wrong, value is missing, things like that, okay? All right, so the next one that I want to talk about is called a variable hoisting. So hoisting, well, JavaScript got a concept of hoisting in with functions as well, with variable. It's kind of a big topic, but for variable it's quite simple. So hoisting is mean if I try to access the variable before it get initialized, I still can access them. For example, if I have let me comment this out. So if I have, let's say, a variable called points, okay, and I have, let's say, a 10 values. Now, normally when you want to access the variable, you're gonna access them after you declare it, right? But now with JavaScript, you can access them before, right? Like this. This will not throw an error, but let's see what is gonna log in the console. Okay. Okay, so it shows access point before initialization. So let me see. Sorry, yeah, my bad. So if you use var, you access before, it's gonna throw undefined. It's the default value of a variable declared with var. But if you use let, if you throw in errors, okay, should be same with cons. If we throw an error, so let and cons have a scope involved into it. So you can simply think of it as that the cons and let is a bit more safe when you use it, right? With var, it's not quite safe, right? I mean, you don't want to access variable before it get initialized, right? Because you don't know the value. That's why it's undefined, because points get saved. JavaScript knows that points get hoisted. That's why it's called hoisting. So once it get hoisted, right? That's why we can console log points, but it doesn't have values, because value get initialized here, right? Init here, right? That's why it shows undefined, because that's the default values of the variable. Okay, so that's things to point out. And okay, let's jump to the data types. Okay, I want to talk about the data type of JavaScript. I will switch to the a table here. Okay, so now this is a table of the types of the JavaScript from the documentation. Okay, there are in total of 8 types. 7 of them are primitives, and 1 of them are objects. Okay, so if you come from other programming language, you're probably familiar with this, but different language gonna have a different base data types, but most of them are similar anyway. Like Boolean is true or false. You have null, which obviously represent non-existing or invalid address, right? Undefined mean you haven't defined a value yet. Okay, numbers is, for JavaScript, numbers that's which gonna include integer and floating point number. So in other type of programming language, like C#, integer and floating are 2 separate data types. It's not the same. Okay, but JavaScript is called numbers. Okay, big int, so it's integer with a massive values. Okay, I will show you in a bit what it look like. You might not have a chance to use it that much, because it can hold a large number of values, more than what number can hold. Okay, you have a string, and you have symbol. So symbol is a bit special. The data types instance are unique. So every time you create a symbol, the return value from the instance of the symbol gonna be different every time. Okay, and you have an object. So now according to the documentation, it says that objects are a collection of properties. Now in this sense, it means arrays also considered as an objects, right? And objects, I'm going to show you a bit, it's a bit confusing. So objects also and objects. Okay, so these are all the types in JavaScript. Okay, so now let's get back to the text editor, and then let's see how we're going to declare those types. It's quite straightforward actually. If I declare, I want to declare say a Boolean value, you can say is true is equal to false, right? Or is false is equal to true, like this. Okay, so this is a Boolean values, right? And you also can initialize something to null as well. Let's say last name maybe null as well. That's it. So you know when you initialize a variable, and sometimes you want to initialize it to something, all right? But you don't know what to put in there yet. You can put null, and then you can, set a last name later to like Joe, like this, right? This will work as well. And you also have undefined. Cool. So now undefined is a default values of the variable if you don't define them. Okay. So for instance, if you do this, right, like that, if you show undefined, that's its default values, okay, of the variable. Okay. Now numbers, as you've seen previously, right? Just let me with the age. So this is numbers, right? This is number. This is strings. You know, with the quote, things like that. And you also have big int. So let's see. Say big number. Now it's very big. Okay, like massive. Also like this. Okay. If you hover over this, it's gonna say big int. Okay. If you hover this one, it's not gonna say int. I mean, it should say number, but for some reason it doesn't say number. But okay, so right, it show a big int. So that's a big int. You're not gonna have a chance to use it that often, to be honest, unless you work in like finance or something like that. You also have an object. So now let's talk about object for a bit. So now object, I can create object like this. Object is equal to, right? So now this is syntax of object. So object contain key and value pair. For example, I can write name. Let's say John. Right, age. Say 20. Right. So now these are objects. Okay. Now I'm gonna have a separate video talking about just object because you need to know how to access the objects, the values, the keys, and how you can add the new key, how to remove the key, and so on. And also the array as well. Array also considered part of an object. But I will talk about an array and object in a separate video. Okay. So I want to touch a bit more about the conversion. Okay, so because JavaScript doesn't actually have types associated with the variable, so under the hood, JavaScript convert that value for you. For instance, if I have just num equal to 10 like this, right? So now this is a number. Okay, this is a number. So if I want to let's say reassign this value to a string of 2. Okay. Normally in other type of programming language, this will not work. You cannot do this. But in JavaScript, you see, it's still a number, but it just works. I will show you by do this. Show you. Or if you do this, right? Sean, let's do this. You see, it still be John, but initially it was a number, right? But you can reassign the values to anything that you want. Okay, it could be a boolean, you know, like you can do like this. Say it's true, right? So this can have no problem at all. Under the hood, JavaScript convert that for you. So let's see one thing that is a bit interesting. I think is that when you have, for example, let's say when you have 1 plus 1, you know, like this, right? It's gonna equal to 2, right? Technically. But what if you have like 1 plus a string of 1, right? What's this gonna be? Because you're gonna face this quite often when you build a program that you have to convert from string to int to do some numeric operation and return as a string or as a number. Okay, so I can show you this, right? If I console log of 1 plus 1, okay, let me delete the console log here. Okay, is 2, right? As expected, is 2. How about this? Because you see, this operation is technically with the static type language, this is wrong, right? You can't actually use numbers and string to, you know, doing an operation, right? You need to convert a type, right? But JavaScript is a bit weird, I would say. Now this will return something interesting, 11 as a string. because JavaScript convert this to a string, right? So it's 1 1 because 1 and 1. Okay. Now, how about you face a situation where you want to plus it together, not combining it like 1 1, but you want to, right? Now, what you can do is you can call parse int like this. So this parse int will convert this to int, and then int plus int, then you can get int, right? So here save, you got 2. All right. So that's how you convert from string to int. All right. Now JavaScript got a lot of conversion. You can refer to the documentation. So which data type you want to convert from which to which when you want to do an operation to it. Okay. And one last thing for this video that I want to point out is the concatenation. Okay, the plus symbol. Okay, just now I show you how to using plus sign to do a numeric operation, right? But now we also can do plus sign to concatenate it of the string as well. For example, if I have let's say I have console.log John. Okay, now I have John here, but if I concat John with another string, right? How about Do? Right, now these two will concatenate together, just like what you see when 1 plus 1 here is similar, right? Except that you have John Doe. Now this is pretty handy because you can do a lot of stuff with this, right? 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 You can do a lot of concatenation, as many as you want, right? Manager, right? John Doe is a manager, right? You can concatenate like this, right? This is concatenation, okay, in short. All right, so this is all for these videos, and thanks for you guys for watching. And if you have any feedback, please just let me know. I do really appreciate it, and see you in the next one.